Welcome to season 14 of the Parenting Aces podcast, a proud member of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week I have a special friend joining us on the pod, Duey Evans, who is a longtime tennis coach, a longtime friend of mine, a friend of Parenting Aces, and actually a partner in crime during COVID of a weekly video series that we did together that you can find on the Parenting Aces YouTube channel. So go check those out. But I'm super excited to have Duey on to talk about what's next for him. He recently announced that he was retiring from on-court coaching, but this man has so much knowledge and so much experience and has been in the tennis world for over 30 years now. And I'm really thrilled to have him share with all of you what he's going to be doing moving forward. I want to urge you to check out the show notes on parentingaces.com for links to getting in touch with Duey and his website. So be sure to check that out. And also just a quick reminder, we are taking a group of juniors and their families, if they care to join, to Spain this July 4th through the 13th. We're going to be going to Barcelona, where the kids are going to be training and competing at a local academy. And then we're going down to Mallorca to the Rafa Nadal Academy, where the kids are going to be training for a week in the gym, on the court, and elsewhere. We've got great sightseeing planned for everybody, great activities planned for everybody. Families can participate in the tennis or just come and enjoy the beautiful areas of Spain that we're visiting. So if you are interested in coming on that trip with us, please shoot me an email, lisa@parentingaces.com. Let me know you're interested, and I will send you the trip brochure that has all of the pricing, all of the options, and everything you need to know. All right, now sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with my friend, Duey Evans. Duey, it is so great to see you, and I'm so excited to get to chat with you again on the podcast. For my audience that hasn't been around since before COVID, they may not know that you and I used to do a weekly live stream, and I really miss those conversations. You challenged me to think outside the box and to consider alternatives to my long-standing points of view. So I'm excited to delve into what's going on with you and your latest thoughts and philosophies around junior and college tennis.
Well, thanks for having me, Lisa. It is, been 4 years, almost 5 years since we were doing the tennis takeaways with Lisa and Duey. And those were good times. Now I'm kind of sitting here having just retired from on-court tennis coaching after having had a very, very mild stroke. But as I was sitting here and thinking about it over the last few weeks, I went back and I watched some of those episodes, and there was the episode where I had just had a heart attack, and we were back here talking about this stuff. But I'm interested to have a chat about junior tennis specifically and just kind of catch up.
Yeah, for sure. You are in Austin, Texas, for my audience members that aren't familiar with you. And if they aren't, they need to go check out our old episodes on YouTube. But you have been in the junior coaching business for decades,
30
and
some odd years.
yeah, and have coached some amazing players over that time. Some that have gone on to play professional tennis, a lot that have gone on to play college tennis, many that have just fallen in love with the game because of the coaching that you provided to them. So I think you bring a unique perspective to this conversation about what is junior tennis, where does it fit into a kid's development, a family's development, et cetera. So I'm excited to kind of dig in a little with you today.
Well, I'll tell you, my greatest secret, my greatest bit that I've learned are some of the things not to do, right? So anybody who has coached any length of time has had a lot of players who haven't reached those lofty levels that we're talking about. And so, like it's like a Sherpa guide. I know where not to go as you're going through the journey because there's no return from there. So, that's great. And I've also had the fortune to have some families around me who very much bought into things that I wanted them to do and were committed to giving their kids a chance to go as far as their talent and desire allow. And yeah, it's been good. It's been good. But now that part of it's over, and I'm trying to find ways to continue to give back and support young athletes without actually hitting another tennis ball.
Well, the courts will miss you, and I'm excited to know that you're still going to be available to the families that want to work with you. Why don't you start out by just kind of giving us your philosophy of junior tennis? What is it? What should it be in the confines of a family unit?
I'll be honest with you, for me, tennis has been a means to an end that didn't involve tennis. It was a laboratory to kind of go through the process of learning how to be exceptional at something and being able to have some lessons that maybe someone didn't realize that they were getting until they were 24, 25, and oh, wow, I learned that when I was playing junior tennis. Because, like you said, some that I've worked with have gone on and played pro tennis. Nobody's come close to winning a senior level grand slam. So, I've had some success at the junior level, but not at the pro level. So, it's about learning other lessons, but I think the best way to learn those lessons is to dig into something and really see how far we can go without compromise, other than things that need to be compromised, right? Family and school. Those are my other two. But so that's always been my place where I felt I was most comfortable was dealing with a 13-year-old who decided they wanted tennis and didn't want all of the other things that, regular school gave them. They didn't want to be in band or orchestra. They didn't want to be in art. They didn't want to be in debate, although lots of them have debated with me um, on all sorts of things. But that's been the place that I felt most comfortable. Along the way, I got lucky and I found some tasters and triers that really decided they wanted to do it and went on. And, in one case, I was coached to someone from very first ball to when she won a gold ball. And so that's junior tennis to me. It's a place to learn about yourself.
I love that. And we talk all the time on this podcast about tennis as a microcosm of life. And these lessons that you learn on the court are really life lessons that you take into life off the court. And it all sounds good. And I think it's important to understand what does that really mean. And that's where you and I were having conversations in our weekly live streams back during COVID. We really kind of went into the weeds on all of that stuff and started chatting about why tennis instead of basketball or baseball or hockey or soccer. And it's that whole idea of the individual putting themselves on the line and testing themselves every time they step foot on the court. And what does that teach a child as they're growing and maturing into adulthood? Some of the lessons that I feel like you impart to your students, but also to the parents and to me, is this notion of you're here to get better, to be the best version of you. That's not to say you're here to be Serena or to be Rafa. You're here to be the best version of you, and you, Duey Evans, are there as a guide to help that player get there. Can you talk a little bit about some of the steps that you feel like are important as a child is growing and developing on the court that parents need to understand about this process?
I think everybody needs to understand that while, talk about tennis as an individual sport, um, it's a team thing. And the captain of the team is the parents. And if a coach doesn't understand that without parents, there are no kids, there is nobody to drive them to the practices and the tournaments, there is nobody to pay the bills, that they're a vital part. And so tennis is a team sport. There are building a team. I've for the last 5 years been part of the team at Austin Tennis Academy. And one of the great things Jack Newman has instituted is we call the individual players teammates. They're teammates to each other. You're there to, iron sharpening iron, supporting each other emotionally. And I think that when we get players to a place where they're looking to be part of something bigger, then we've unlatched something. I think too often it's looked as a zero-sum game, and if someone else isn't doing well or is doing well, then I'm not. But it's not true. We see kids all the time stressing out about I'm getting worse. And well, no, maybe at that point in time, you're in the slow lane and you're struggling with something new, and the other kids around you are at that place where they're in a free run because the things that they're working on, they're catching on to very quickly. But there are other times when, you switch roles and you're getting better faster than somebody else. And so I think when kids look at the big picture, the long-term thing. I've for almost my whole career, I've said I want kids who have at least 3 years left in junior tennis before I start working with them. Because I kind of have felt like it takes 3 years for a young person to be mostly things that either we've put in together or that I've decided were really good already when they came to me. And so now it's a reflection of our partnership. Um, and so I think that's a key point is, recognizing that it's a journey and it's a long journey. And, I have a written coaching philosophy. And in that philosophy, it actually says that most parents who are say they're looking for high performance development, are really looking for immediate upgraded performance. They're, a couple bad tournaments and let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, that's a problem. And it's something that I try to talk to parents about as well, is that, this is a journey. You're not going to have a week at some high performance camp and all of a sudden your UTR is going to shoot up 5 points. It's just not the way it works. It is a gradual process. And I think managing expectations on the part of the player and the parent is one of the roles of a great coach. Do you agree with that?
I think that I don't know what I think of as a great coach, but I know what I think of as a subpar coach, right? I think that the thing that I know that I can do without fail is to keep someone from playing college tennis. Like I know that I can accomplish that. Whether I could get someone to play a Grand Slam or not are a lot of factors, some of which are out of my control. But a little bit of malfeasance and nonfeasance, and all of a sudden somebody goes well below what their potential is, right? I think that there's optimum challenge, and to get to where, if someone wants to go, you can't stay right on that tightrope of here's exactly what you need to do. And I think what happens with most cases is they go one of two ways. They don't want to burn somebody out and things. And so they stay so far away from that line that the kid doesn't reach up to that potential, or they stay on the push too hard side and now they burn the kid out and the kid doesn't want to do it anymore. So, I think that the challenge really is, we're doing this with a velvet glove on top of an iron fist, and, know when to hammer and when to stroke. And it's hard. And I think that that's part of what takes time, right? There's an old saying, cliched as it may be, of nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, that takes time. right? And,
Mm-hmm.
I think being single again, recognizing in a new relationship, you don't know when those moments are going to come that test that relationship and see how someone responds. Well, same thing with a coaching relationship. How, where are those moments? And if everything's smooth sailing for a while, what happens when things get hard? Um, and I think that that's the challenge, is recognizing how to connect with the person first. So being player-centered coaching, without being Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, what's so crazy about tennis too is that because it's an individual sport, every individual is different. So as a coach, just because something works with player A doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work with player B. Even as a parent, if you have multiple children in the sport, what works for kid number one isn't going to necessarily work for kid number two. And this is the constant push and pull of our sport and the constant challenge, and why it's so important to build those relationships and to build that trust between the player, the parent, and the coach. How are you, when you were on court working with families, and then I want to transition into what's next for you, but what are some of the things that you found to work well when you were starting a new relationship and trying to build that trust?
Being consistent, being the person that I knew I was capable of being on any given day, so that the player came very quickly to know who I was going to be. And I generally wasn't a super kind, wrap your arm around the player, say that we'll meet online to play video games at night. It was somebody who was, pretty strict. And, but I felt like being consistent was the most important thing, so that the player knew what to expect. And a lot of cases that meant wearing sunglasses, because there were times that I needed to be hard in I have eyes that give me away all the time. And I needed to, you know, let somebody know that something wasn't acceptable for the 18th time today, when I was kind of feeling kind of sorry for him, but it wasn't okay the first time, and it's still not okay this time. And so, the consistency, I felt like, was most important. That you don't have to be the nicest coach. In fact, it's generally not that person that players will respect the most. And it's not the harshest coach that somebody will. But I think, I learned I was a screw up as a kid, just who I was. And hadn't graduated from high school with my class because I didn't have enough credits. And so I had to go to an all boys prep school in Maine. 187 boys in the middle of Maine in winter is kind of an interesting experience. But then one day I got a call, and it was a call from me on the payphone in the dormitory. And I went to it, and it was a recruiter from West Point. And I got on the phone with the recruiter, and the recruiter said, what you don't know, and Coach Ty, my high school football coach, who I thought absolutely despised me, had told him was, people don't know that you're a year younger than everybody in your class because you skipped a grade. And that, he was calling me the sleeper of the East. And, so I got recruited and signed sight unseen, didn't even have to apply. They said, after my visit, we'll see you July 1st, without even having filled out my application yet. Well, Coach Ty was someone who I just thought hated me. We had to watch films on Monday, and he was like, "Evans, are you kidding me? You look like a traffic cop out there. You're just standing up and looking around." And and what I came to learn is, it's often those coaches that see the most in you who push you the hardest. What you got to watch out for is that person that just allows you to goof off and get away with whatever. They don't see very much in you, and therefore they're not pushing you to reach, a potential. I guess it's what George W. Bush once called the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. And it's not every coach is right for every kid, and not every kid is right for every coach. And I think figuring that out early in the relationship, because the coach is being consistent and showing who they are, is really important and can save a lot of heartache. And one of the kind of I don't know what the word is, but the push pull of junior tennis is, yes, it's a long journey. And yes, it's only about a 10-year journey or 8-year journey, depending on when you jump on. So that sounds like a lot of time when you're just getting started, but then all of a sudden you blink and the kid's ready to start dealing with college recruiting or making decisions about their future in the sport. So you have to make good decisions and you have to nip bad decisions in the bud and move on, because what you don't want is to waste time in a situation that's not benefiting the child who has this goal that they are trying to achieve, right? So that was unfortunately a lesson I learned very late in the process with my son, and one that I try and avoid with other families, because again, that it is a journey, but there is a finite start and finish to it.
Yeah, I think you get one do-over, right? So you can I think we all make choices on first coaches based on where's the local program. We don't know anything about tennis, most parents. And so we're just putting our kid in things to see what they like. And so that first coach may not be one that's going to give a great foundation, but they might be somebody who got the kid interested enough, but now you got to go someplace and you got to make good decisions the rest of the way through. And what a good coach is for different stages of development is different. So somebody who was really great when somebody was a taster trier isn't necessarily the person that's going to be, great when they're 120 in the country and they're trying to become top 30 in the country, or transitioning from playing USTA national events to ITF events. And so finding out who those people are is really important. And I think that it's less important that you find somebody who's been there before than you are finding somebody that's going to take an interest in your child and going to learn or find the information that's necessary. And at least that's been my experience. I guess maybe because I was one of those who came from another sport, and while I'd played tennis since I was, in single digits, I wasn't someone who went on to play professional tennis and, came off the tour.
But you're somebody who understands the pursuit of excellence. You're somebody who understands interpersonal relationships, and you're a learner. You are a striver. So all of those things translate into someone who has the potential to be a really good coach. And I think, that's what Jack sees in you. That's what the families you've worked with over the years have seen in you. And then, from the get-go, you've proven that you know what the heck you're doing out there. So the track record, at this point, the track record speaks for itself, but early going, people, I'm guessing, had to take a bit of a risk on you.
Yeah, I definitely took a risk on me. And I think my greatest talent was figuring out who the mentor people were who were good were, and that who then saw a bunch in me. And, I got lucky that right off the bat, when I started coaching, I had 3 kids, and the kids adopted me, not the parents, but 3 kids who had been, pretty good. One of them had been, I believe, 2 in the country in the 12s the year before, and 2 of the others were his older and younger brother, and then someone else who I ended up having legal custody of for a while. But they were really good. And then I moved to Atlanta, and I ran into, someone who had just was given access to someone who had just lost in the finals of boys 14 clays, and then got asked to coach somebody who had been a semifinalist at Junior US Open, and, just on and on. And I just, luck, but I think I worked hard enough that when luck presented itself, I was ready. Right. So what was Vince Lombardi said, I don't know, something about hard work meeting opportunities was his definition of luck. And so,
Yeah.
I worked my butt off, and chances came my way.
So tell us what's next now that you're done being on court, and so happy that your health issues seem to be under control, and you don't look like somebody who just had a stroke, I have to say. So that makes me happy to see. But
Yeah.
what's next for you? What are you doing
Yeah. Well,
now?
and just say, like, my stroke was very mild, but it was a stroke. Wasn't a TA, wasn't a, but extremely mild. What's next? Well, I'm really interested in NIL. That's probably the place that
Name,
I'm
image,
most in.
likeness for people that aren't familiar. Sorry.
Correct. And, knowing that, well, I guess I've had the experience now of I have access to and relationships with some people who have kids playing college tennis. And so looking at what's going on with the universities and the collectives and what is NIL versus pay for play and how does that whole thing work? And if you're thinking about then transitioning into the pros, how do you develop those relationships? But recognizing that it's not even, if we wait till college, it's too late. There are so many kids who have no profiles. Not that they're putting bad stuff out there, but they have nothing on their profile to let people know who they are. Um, and so looking at, well, how far down can we go? Could we take the kids that are playing in Little Mo? So they're the ones that are most on track to go play college tennis, right? They're already have a lot into it. And so can they have NIL? And is it possible to train them, give them media training and communications coaching in a way that they come across like Coco Gauff, right? There's no doubt that people have worked with her in her communication skills. And, in some cases that's is the kind of being in the kind of program where the coach teaches you that you have to walk up and look somebody in the eye and shake their hand. And, that's where it starts. But is there an opportunity for that kid that is a Little Mo finalist in the 9 and unders, but whose family has struggled, and it's now time to travel more and get better training, and the cost of it just goes up and up and up, and it doesn't ever come back down unless you become so good that a national governing body takes interest in you. But that's not necessarily even the preferred route for a lot of people. So, could we do something where we're creating NIL opportunities for young kids, and they're very different products and things, but for business, because for I don't know, 8 years or something, I've had a media business also, right? So
Mhm.
we do a lot of media creation, and we have these things we call video business cards, which is what we do. We sit down with a whole bunch of people and interview them, and then develop a story out of those various interviews, which, ends up being about between 2 and 3 minutes long. And we cover all the edits with B-roll, video of stuff. And can we create those types of things for kids? And not only does that make NIL possible, but if I start with a 9-year-old and I say, okay, every age division we're going to do, so 9 and 11 and 13 and 15 and 17, what a great little legacy thing for the kid to look back on and see how they've developed and their communication skills have developed over time. um, because ultimately, what happens? I work with a young man, Chase Curry, who right after he won ITF in Wichita Falls was involved in a car accident where he fell asleep on Thanksgiving with, his siblings in the car, and, hasn't had the opportunity. He was in intensive care for a long time, and has not had the opportunity to do anything with tennis like he had been on path to do. And, so what happens if that ended up being somebody else's greatest moment? Who knows what he has to look back on? But what if he had a video like that told his story and had video clips of him hitting tennis balls and with his friends laughing and all those things for, all of those years prior? So I think there's a huge opportunity to give kids those skills necessary to make themselves marketable to various businesses, to college coaches. Um, I was going through stuff and looking at a video when I first got to ATA that I did of a young lady who had changed from playing right-handed to playing left-handed because of an injury that she had. And looking at the video that we did with her, she's like, I think I can, it shows to college coaches that I'm not going to quit, that I have grit, that I'm going to, be a good teammate, and, a whole bunch of things that it's like, wow, what if everybody had a video like that that said to college coaches, here's what we want. Somebody like this will add to the culture of our team, not detract from it. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing. And at the same time, finding one-off opportunities to have players come in and to work with them. Ooh, this earpiece just keeps falling out.
It's on your
Not
collar.
going to be able to hear you if I don't put it back in, Lisa. But so how do we create opportunities for somebody to come in for 2 days with their parent, with their primary coach, for them to go through workouts, and for me to make little suggestions here and there, right? I had basically a similar situation with a friend who came in from North Carolina for an L4 with one of his players this past weekend. So my friend was the coach, but just being on the court and asking questions of, well, why does she do this? What's she trying to do? What do you hope that she does? And then when my coach went back to North Carolina, I texted him, I guess on Tuesday, and he said, since she's been back, she's been more focused. She's, has more direction in what she's doing. I think that happens all the time. It used to happen to me, and I worried about it. So I would go to Atlanta when I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. And a good friend of mine was a guy by the name of Ernie Peterson. And we would go to Burdett Tennis Center in College Park, and Coach Peterson would say something in the exact, and so he was my mentor, right? So we used the same verbiage and everything. And a kid would all of a sudden say, oh, I get what you're saying. And I would be so annoyed. Like, I didn't change the words, didn't change the anything. And then I said to myself, it doesn't matter. My coach is to facilitate someone getting the information, not for it to be me that gets the information. So, somebody coming in for a couple of days, and if a kid walks away and has an epiphany, well, that's what we're looking for, right? They don't come very often, and can do the same thing. They come for a tournament, or they come specifically for a one-off, 2 days spent here. So that's kind of what I have going.
So two prongs. So you're doing the kind of consulting / coaching role when people come in for short term, but then you're also looking to help these players develop really their branding and develop communication skills, and at the same time create sort of a legacy of what tennis is for them and what role it's played in their life by creating these videos. Am I summarizing that properly?
Yeah. I have a marketing company, or in a video content production business. And I'm a tennis coach who has about 35 years of working with players at every age and every level. And how do I use all of this experience that I have to benefit players?
Yeah.
And so, I'm also somebody who has wide interests, and I don't think I could do just one thing. So doing both things is, keeps life interesting, though it's just launching.
Ever since I've known you, you have not been limited to one thing. You've always had your hands in several projects at the same time, which is, I think, one of the things that fuels our friendship, which I love. So I want to talk a little bit more about this NIL stuff, because there is a fine line between selling your kid to get money versus helping your child learn skills and maximize that skill development to generate revenue to fund this journey toward the dream, right? Like, it, they're two different things, and it is a very fine line. And we've seen cases where I can't come up with a polite way to say this. I'm just going to say it. So pardon
Yeah.
me if this is offensive, but we've seen cases of parents like pimping out their kids on Instagram or TikTok to try and get these brand deals to kind of pay the parents back or to set up some sort of fund or whatever it is, whatever the reason is. And there is that, especially when we're talking about younger children, there is that fine line of how do we do this without exploiting the child, but also, this is expensive. How do we fund this otherwise? And so this is now a thing that's presented itself to tennis, this NIL thing. And I've done podcasts on this. So for those of you watching or listening that don't understand the NIL deal, please search NIL in our podcast and you'll come up with some episodes that explain how junior players can use it. It's not just for college players. And Duey, like, how do you present this to a family to make sure that they're not crossing that line into something untoward?
That's mentorship, right? So we talk about coaches mentoring players. Who's mentoring the parents? It is somebody who can you're good for you, and you've been doing it for, I think this is season 14.
Yes.
So God bless you. It is having that place where you can tug on somebody and say that's over, that's over the top, and letting somebody know, well, you can do a little bit more. There are people who don't come from the same background that you and I come from, right? They don't have the same Judeo-Christian values, and so they look at things differently. And I think some of it is we have to realize that, we're not always, I'm not always trying to push my values on someone else, but I am trying to make sure that people who are around me have similar enough values that I want to be around them.
Mm-hmm. And you have to be able to sleep at night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the worst experience of my coaching career was when I was coaching on the women's tour, 50Ks, 75Ks, that level. That was the most dysfunctional place I've ever been in my life, that there were just many people from, most of them non-Americans, who couldn't afford anything. And they were pimping out their daughters to young coaches. So 19-year-old girls essentially getting pimped out to 26-year-old guys, looking for free coaching. And then those coaches having a philosophy that the easiest way to get this girl to do what I want is to make her fall in love with me. It was,
Yeah.
right? And so that's where we go if we don't help players learn to market themselves to where they can have the funds if their talent and desire allows them to go that far. So,
and to maintain control over the content, right? I mean, that's the other piece of this, is making sure that any content that gets put out there, and let's face it, if it's on your camera, somebody's going to find it somewhere. So you better make sure it's something that you want your grandma to see, for example.
right.
So maintaining that control over the content and making sure that there is somebody at the helm of that has the player's best interest at heart and the family's best interest at heart. And this is where you come into play, Duey, because you are somebody that will always put the player first, and then the parents a close second. And you're not going to condone or sit idly by while a kid puts something out there that could potentially harm them down the road.
No, I had a discussion with a parent, I guess 2 weeks ago now, and his daughter is, devoutly Christian, and who has almost no posts on her Instagram at all. And he said, she won't do it because she's not ever going to be that person who posts pictures in bathing suits and things like that. And so it's a matter of getting her to recognize that you don't have to do all of those things, but you also, can post things where, you're doing what other people do. Like everybody goes to the beach, everybody wears a bathing suit. So being with, mom and dad on the beach and, you know, having some kind of cover up on, but knowing that, that people are
Right.
going to go to whatever creepy place they're going to go anyways. Right. But
Well, but
creating,
right.
yep,
I
go ahead.
think when NIL first came out, what we were seeing with female athletes in college was the female athletes getting the NIL deals were the ones posting that type of content where they were showing a lot of skin, they were, more suggestive photos and this and that. And I think NIL kind of got a bad rap because of that. That was kind of just the beginning stage of it. And I think what has happened in the last 3 to 5 years is female athletes now understand and are being guided properly to understand that you can be who you are. You can be a strong, athletic, smart, successful, goal-oriented female, and brands will be drawn to you as someone they want to represent their brand. It's not all about the sex appeal piece of it. Thank goodness.
I think you hit the nail on the head when at the beginning of what you just said, which is it was all new. Like we didn't know. People were trying. There was no expertise. There was nobody to go ask about how do you do this. Now you get to the university level and there might be somebody in the NIL department that you can go to and ask about it. There wasn't that before. There is still almost none of it guiding somebody from preteen age
Yeah.
up through that. And how do you prepare? Though there are people who are going through that and making the mistakes along the way. And I think that mistakes are okay, right? I don't think that we can ever be so careful about anything that we don't ever make mistakes. I think the key is just don't make mistakes that are going to have long-term negative repercussions. So, you go out and one of the suggestions I would have for your audience is if you're someplace where your game face is taking pictures, pay Lloyd and Melissa for photos. You will get good, high quality photos, and they will have it. If you're at somebody whose kid plays at that level, do it a lot. One of the players that I coach who's now out of college tennis and just retired from pro tennis last summer has a coffee table book of all the photos that your game face took of him over his junior tennis career. I don't want to single them out, but I know they do quality work, and
Yeah.
I certainly want to give them a plug. But use those services as they come along, and find the innocent things that your kid is interested in. Right, one of the keys to marketing, product placement, and so have product placement early. If your kid, I asked my oldest daughter, who's 20, about to be 28, and has a 1-year-old, or one who's about to be one. I asked her the other day if she had Baby D, and Baby D was an American Girl doll that girl took everywhere with her, and she still has it. But so if your kid has a stuffed animal that they've taken to tournaments and they sleep with, don't be afraid to get a picture of kid unpacking their tennis bag. And my youngest daughter, who played competitive tennis, she had a stuffed monkey that was one of those things that made it into the basket somehow in the store when she was very young. But he's called Mr. Monkey. And Mr. Monkey is just part of the family. As a matter of fact, Mr. Monkey has a monkey Christmas tree ornament of his own. But don't be afraid to show that, there's still a little girl left in here. I was at tournament this past weekend, and I looked at these kids, and I'm watching the tennis, and they, come off the court and they're walking by. I was like, man, that's not even a little kid. That's a baby. That, some of the 12 and under kids, that really just is a baby, but that looks so mature when they're out there on the court and all of those things. Don't be afraid to let the world know that they're not grown up yet. And it's, I think that we've all been cautioned about putting things of our kid out there.
Mhm.
I don't know as there's the kind of danger that we think of if we are parents who pretty much guard our kids, if our kids aren't ones that we're, dropping off at the party. That's it. Somebody, if those are our kids, we got to worry about them anyways.
Right. Right. No, I think all of this, idea of building a brand and teaching kids how to communicate with adults, like you said, making eye contact, shaking hands, this type of media training is only going to benefit them throughout life. I mean, these are skills that you need no matter what you do in your life, whether it's just in interpersonal relationships or, professional relationships and everything in between. It used to be that the USTA provided media training to the juniors that were at the highest level, playing the national events and the international events. I think that disappeared a while ago. And it's interesting for me when I'm at tournaments and I'm interviewing players, you can tell the kids that feel very comfortable talking on camera versus the ones that have never done it before, and they really, just don't have that confidence yet. So even if somebody brings you in, Dewey, to create these videos and to do this type of training, even if it doesn't manifest in a brand deal or, some sort of other financial gain, the skills that child is developing are going to be so helpful down the road.
Yeah, no doubt about it that they are all life skills that we need to have. At West Point, we had to do all these memorizations, and one of them was MacArthur's opinion of athletics. And it says that upon the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds, which upon other fields on other days will bear the fruits of victory. Well, the things that we're learning along this journey are things that are going to do well by us for as long as we're here on this planet.
For sure. If people want to reach out to you, Dewey, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you or to kind of see what your work looks like and, that kind of thing?
Sure. They can go to my newly crafted website. Well, it's a retooled website, but it is called theperformancearchitect.com. Or they can reach out to me, Duey, Duey, at theperformancearchitect.com.
Okay, cool. And we'll have those links in the show notes on parentingaces.com. So we'll make it really easy for you to find Dewey and reach out to him. Dewey, I hope we're going to have more conversations over the next few months as the Performance Architect kind of re-emerges in its new form, and as you start working with more families, more players, so that we can kind of see where you're headed and get updates on what's going on in the world of NIL, the world of media training, the world of brand deals, and also just Dewey's world.
Yeah. So I guess one other thing I can share, that if you go to the Performance Architect and look, I'm going to be starting a morning call. So 2 days a week where, just going to get on a call and just chew it up. It's going to be called Rise and Grind. And, get up, and while you're having that morning cup of coffee, let's talk about all of those things. The one thing I will not be talking about is cheating. So just so you know, like that one's That conversation is verboten in my world.
How do you avoid that?
I don't
Teach
know.
me, teach
I think
me,
it's,
Yoda.
I think it's as simple as saying that there were many things that you could have done to win points that you lost. Don't worry about those handful of points that, somebody took, and most of whom, many of which they probably absolutely believed the ball was out, right? Because
Yeah,
when we used to have the challenge system with Hawkeye, how many times did you see the person stop the point and knowing that it was going to be replayed that actually made the call and they were wrong, right?
yeah,
So what would they have done if it was a self-call match? So it didn't have anything to do with they were trying to cheat. It just had to do with they firmly believed that, the call was wrong,
yes,
one way or
yeah,
the other.
yeah.
So
Love it. Love it. All right. So people can find that information on your website as well. And do you have to sign up for those calls or how does that work?
that will the those calls will be a subscription, um, but it's not gonna be much. I think it amount to $3 a day or something.
Cool.
For a private lesson with me at Austin Tennis Academy until a month and a half ago was $175 an hour. So it's not real money. So I saw
It's a
somebody.
bargain.
Yeah, saw somebody the other day that had to change their flight because the match was running late, and it was a $300 change fee. So, you know, yeah.
Yeah. The stuff we spend money on. It is crazy. But anyway, it is great to see you. I am so happy that you're keeping your hand in tennis in some way, shape, or form, and continuing to share your wisdom and your experience with the rest of us because we all have stuff to learn from you. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm glad you're still doing this. I still watch. I watched a couple of episodes, the Mr. Teacher one, and I think two people, JY and somebody else, were both presenting their solutions to somebody. Um, yeah, it was good. Glad to see you still doing it and connecting people across the way to make everybody's lives improved. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Duey. And to my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Parenting Aces.